Hey, neighborhood church. Welcome to Bible University. I'm Doug Ferguson, one of the members of the church. I'm also a life group leader of probably the best life group in the church. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to participate as a volunteer with the worship team. Today, we'll be continuing our study in the book of Philippians, written by the Apostle Paul. We're in chapter 4, and we'll be concentrating on verses 8 and 9. I'll be using the 1996 edition of the New International Version of the Bible. And so let's get started here. See if I can get my document up on the screen. There it is. And as I said, we are in Philippians 4, 8, and 9. And our text today says, verse 8, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And verse 9 says, whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. As a quick background to chapter 4, Paul has been sharing with the Christians in Philippi about things that he thought they needed to do in their new Christian lives. He says, stand firm and agree and help each other. Rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to everyone. And above all, don't be anxious about anything. So then we get into verse 8, where he says, finally, brothers. Now, Paul uses the term brothers, which is the word adelphos, which literally means brothers. Now, Paul wasn't being sexist here by only speaking to the men folk of the church. If you remember, the first people that he met in Philippi were women. The first convert he made was Lydia. And in verse 2 of chapter 4, he referred to Euodia and Syntyche as his co-workers, or those who have labored by his side. So using the term brothers was just the cultural norm of the day. Now, as an aside, some newer translations of the Bible, like the New Revised Standard Version, the latest edition of the New International Version, and the New Living Translation, and probably others, use inclusive language and will translate this as brothers and sisters. We'll just use the term brothers today. So Paul says, finally, brothers. And then he lists some terms that would have been familiar to his readers. These are things that reflected secular Greek values. Remember, he was writing to Greek Christians, and they would have been very familiar with these terms. And he was telling them, use these terms in their Christian lives in order to relate to their culture. He's saying to communicate the gospel message in a manner that the people could understand. You know, when we think about it, this was something that Jesus did very well. Jesus talked to people in terms that they could understand. He talked about coins and sheep and sowing and reaping and how to get along with their neighbors and about life and how they were living. And that's why Paul uses these particular terms. He knew the people in Philippi would be able to relate, and he's asking them to adapt these values and to use them in their Christian lives. It sounds like a pretty good message for us today, doesn't it? Well, Paul goes on then to list these terms. Now some versions of the Bible use different words, and I've listed some of those different words, but the root word in the Greek is the same. So he starts out and he says, whatever is true. True is aletheis. And now it means being truthful, honest, and sincere. Paul is telling the Philippians to think about things that are aletheis, to zero in, to have a laser-like focus, to pay attention, pay close attention to those things that are true, those things that that are real and ignore those things that are lies and falsehoods. And there was a lot of false teaching going along at the time, and he's saying focus on the truth. And then he says, whatever is noble or honorable, the word semnos, and it means being honorable or worthy or holy, being above reproach. Now, to be reproached means to be blamed or disgraced. Paul's saying, don't do that. Don't do anything that will bring dishonor, blame, or disgrace in your life. And then whatever is right. He's saying diakeos. It has the meaning of being upright, fair, or equitable. Now, in the Jewish sense, the word meant maintaining the law of God. But in the Greek sense, and remember, he's talking to Greek Christians here, it had the meaning of being a model citizen. So Paul was instructing them to be model citizens in their daily lives. And he says, whatever is pure. Pure is hagnos. And it means, well, it means pure. It means holy. As Christians, we're to stay away from joining in on the sins of others and to remain pure. We see in 1 Timothy 5:22, and do not share in the sins of others. Keep yourself pure. He says, whatever is lovely, prosphelis. It has the meaning of being pleasing or agreeable, amiable, or having friendly and pleasant manner. Interestingly, this particular word isn't referred to anywhere else in the New Testament, but the word would have been very familiar to the Greek people. It wasn't the sense of facial loveliness, but being friendly and pleasant. And then he says, whatever is admirable or commendable, euphemos. This has the basic idea of being praiseworthy or commendable. It's being of good report or being of good repute, something that is worthy or worthy of approval or recognition or praise. And then he says, if anything is excellent, arete, which denotes exemplary or consummate excellence, or an uncommon character worthy of praise. And he says, if anything is praiseworthy, it's epinos. This has the meaning of someone or something that is worthy of recognition or praise. Now, Paul says, think about such things. Whatever you've learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice. The word think is logizome. And it has a deeper meaning than just a passing thought, passing through running through the gray matter of your brain. It means to dwell or meditate on. Years ago, it was a popular pastime to meditate, and that meant to sit with your legs crossed, your eyes closed, empty your mind and chant. It was kind of, Well, that's not what Paul's talking about here. The present tense of the verb think gives it the sense of continue to do. He says, continue to do these things. It's an ongoing process. He knew the dangers that the people in Philippi faced. And they're the same ones that we face today, of falling back into a secular world. And he's telling them to keep on living in the ways that he's taught them. He says the same thing in chapter 3, verse 17. He says, join with others in following my example, brothers, and take note of those who live according to the pattern we gave you. You know, much about our Christian life comes down to our mindset and what we think about. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." And I really like the way Eugene Peterson says it in the Message. He says, "Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking." You know, our thoughts have the power to lift us up or to drag us down. And Paul says to continue thinking on the things that you have heard from me and put them into practice. Look at the list of words I've given you, he says. Look at the things that I've instructed you to do and do them, but keep on doing them. And then finally, Paul goes on to say, and the God of peace will be with you. The God of peace will be with them. And you know, it's a promise of peace. It's the peace that passes all understanding and the peace that will guard their hearts and their minds in Christ Jesus. So what can we take away from today's verses? You know, Paul asked the believers in Philippi to focus their minds on these things that he's listed and to give their full attention to them, to put them into practice. These are qualities that Paul knew would serve those Christians well. And you know what? They're qualities that will serve us well today. Well, that wraps up verses 8 and 9 of chapter 4. I'm Doug Ferguson. Thanks for being with me. And stay tuned to Neighborhood Church Bible University for the next exciting study. Thanks again. Have a great day.